Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council and San Bruno Redevelopment Agency meeting of February 8, 2011. As always, we'd like to thank the San Bruno Garden Club for providing our floral arrangement this evening. I'd like to ask for roll call, please. Carol?
Council Agency Member O'Connell.
Here.
Mayor Vice Chair Salazar.
Here.
Mayor Chair Ruane.
Here.
Council Agency Member Medina.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. I would like Mark Sullivan to lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council member Ibarra is excused this evening with notice. We have a few announcements. The City Council has scheduled a study session for Wednesday, February 16, 2011 at 6 p.m. to discuss preparation of the 2011-2012 budget, and that will be held at City Hall. Right. Also, there's a great article in the current issue of Western City that was written by our city manager, Connie Jackson, and it talks about the emergency response and how important all of the preparation was for this terrible disaster we had on September 9th. So if you'd like to read it, it's very interesting, very informative, and great job, Connie. So it's Western City Magazine, and you can read the article online. Also,
Mr. Mayor, I can give the public a little bit of information about where to find it.
please.
It is on the League of California Cities website, cacities.org, and I believe they have a section on their website that is Western Cities, and it includes the articles. We are also anticipating an upcoming issue of the Focus newsletter, in which we intend to provide that information along with some other interesting updates for the community, particularly regarding the Glenview fire situation. And we anticipate having that out within the next probably month.
Great. All right, thank you. And the last thing, we would like to take this opportunity as a council and a city to welcome Mark Zaffarano, our new city attorney. Mark has a very extensive experience working with other peninsula cities, and we look forward to having Mark as our city attorney. It'll be a great asset for San Bruno. Thank you. Presentations. There are no presentations this evening. Review of the agenda. Any issues with the agenda? Okay. Approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting of January 25th, 2011. Any errors, omissions, corrections? Seeing none, they will be approved as submitted. Good job, Carol. Consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implement an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested by a council member, citizen, or staff. Action.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion second on the consent calendar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approved. Public hearings. Notices have been published, posted, and mailed. The first one is hold a public hearing, waive the second reading, and adopt 2010 fire and building code ordinances to be adopted by reference with amendments. Staff report, please.
Thank you and good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council.
And you are?
Aaron Ackney, the Community Development Director.
Thank you.
Every 3 years, the state of California adopts a new set of building codes, and these building codes must be implemented as adopted by every city. However, the cities are able to adopt amendments because of unique conditions within their city. On January 11, 2011, the City Council waived the first reading and introduced the attached ordinances for adoption, which are basically adopting all the state codes by reference, plus a number of local amendments. Since that time, the public hearing notice has been published in a manner consistent with state guidelines. What's unique about adopting codes by reference is that you actually hold the public hearing during the second reading rather than the first reading, and there's a unique way that you have to post all the notices within the paper, and we followed all those guidelines, and we have not received any comments to this date. At that January meeting, The City Council also adopted a resolution to have the findings of needs for these local amendments and set the public hearing date for today. I won't go over all the code amendments. We've already covered those in 2 previous council meetings. They're all within the written report. However, a few important ones are the council remembers that we adopted the Tier 1 measures of the Green Building Code. The Green Building Code is a first-of-a-kind type building code that's requiring sustainable measures be implemented within buildings within San Bruno. We adopted the Tier 1 measures, which are basically the middle ground. There's the mandatory measures, which were the lowest sustainability level, and the Tier 2. We adopted the Tier 1. Another important one is the wildland urban interface amendment. And what this does is allows the building official, fire marshal, to have certain materials required when you're near a eucalyptus grove or near some highly combustible area. Finally, one that's related to code enforcement as well, is it prohibiting the storage of combustible materials in multifamily carports and garages. And we've had that issue sometimes up at Shelter Creek and other areas within the city, so it's good to see that amendment within here. If approved, these amendments will be submitted to the Building Standards Commission, and the ordinance will go into effect 30 days from now. I could take any questions if you have any.
Any questions of our director?
Through the chair.
Rico?
Very quick, on your staff report under discussion, it states, none of these amendments would result in a significant increase to the cost of the construction for the San Bruno property owner. Can you define for me what significant means in your world?
Sure. Basically, there will be comparable costs. So even without these amendments, the price of construction will be about the same as it would be with these amendments. Most of these amendments are just codifying existing construction practices. For instance, putting reinforcement within foundations. Everyone does that around here because it's an earthquake area. So it won't add costs. It'll be comparable costs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Through the chair.
Michael?
I was wondering, I noticed that there are sections in each part of this that we're amending that seem to be repetitive.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if for just conciseness, if those could be put in one section and then referenced so that every time we redo these or review them, that we can just point back to one section. The section on CEQA seems to be consistent across all of them. A couple other sections as well. I'm wondering if legally, do we have to include that in every part of this, or could it be moved to one section and then just referenced?
You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I know that there's a standard format you have to follow for each type of ordinance, and there does have to be some repetition. I mean, what I wish they did in the end is consolidate the 10,000 pages of building codes into one easy-to-use book, because that's a problem in itself, that you have 11, 12 building codes with 1,000 pages in each of them, you know, and you have to learn all of those and inspect per all of those codes. But yeah, we could take a look to see how during the next cycle we could clean up the ordinances so it's more streamlined.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the director? All right, at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Would anyone in the public like to speak on this issue? If we close the public hearing, you're precluded from speaking on this issue again. Action.
Move to close the public hearing?
Second?
Motion and second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any additional questions or action on this particular item? Need a motion to waive the second reading.
So moved.
Second?
Motion to waive the second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
And we need a motion to adopt the Fire and Building Code.
I'll move for adoption of the code.
I'll second.
Motion and second to adopt the code. All in favor?
Aye.
Our second item on public hearing is hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution approving request for citizens' option for public safety funds in the amount of $100,000 for 2010-2011. Chief?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Neil Telford, your police chief. In 1996, Assembly Bill 3229 implemented the Citizens Option for Public Safety, or the COPS program. The program appropriated state funds to supplement local law enforcement for enhancing frontline police services. The amount available for fiscal year 2010-2011 is $100,000. Part of the requirements for COPS funding is a written request from the Chief of Police to identify the frontline needs of the law enforcement agency and to hold a public hearing. Since 2001, the department has identified a need for a traffic officer to supplement its law enforcement services to the community. and we have dedicated the COPS funding to that position since that time. Tonight, I'm making that same recommendation. Traffic enforcement and the related duties are critical to providing law enforcement services to this community. The traffic officer position enhances the department's ability to respond to traffic complaints, enforce traffic laws, and investigate traffic collisions. The request and recommendation before you tonight will allow COPS funding to continue to be devoted to maintain the traffic officer that we have in our current budget. That concludes my presentation. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions of the chief?
Through the chair. My understanding then, Chief, is that this is good for the 2010-2011 budget, the $100,000. That's what it's going to reimburse for the park enforcement officer?
For the traffic officer, yes, you are correct.
So does the governor have any proposals to eliminate this process in the next budget? Or if the measures that the governor's putting on the ballot fail, could that jeopardize this funding for future?
Yes, you are correct. The COPS program is funding through the VLF or vehicle license fee that the governor is trying, and that will sunset in June. The governor is trying to extend that through legislation or potentially put it on the ballot. But if that does not come to pass, then yes, that traffic officer position is in jeopardy.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the chief? All right, this time we'll open the public hearing. Would anyone in the public like to address the council on this issue? Once again, I remind you, if we close the public hearing, you're precluded from speaking on this again.
Move to close public hearing.
Second?
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any additional questions, comments, or action?
Go ahead and introduce the resolution for adoption, please.
Councilmember Medina.
Here. aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item number 9, public comment on items not on the agenda. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Anyone in the public like to speak to the council on items not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll go right into conduct of business, item number 10. And our first item is receive oral report on city tree maintenance and removal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Randy Schwartz, Community Services Director, which oversees Parks Division among several of the other divisions in the city. An update on the tree report is that the city crews perform maintenance on approximately 6,800 trees in our urban forest. There's many administrative and city policies to ensure the proper care and management of those trees, and the trees are trimmed and maintained to the standards of the International Society of Arboriculture, ISA, which is the group that gives us the Tree City USA recognition every year. Included in those policies are criteria of when to remove trees and the necessary replacements of those trees. Street trees are maintained on an every 4-year cycle, so that city crews will go out and physically touch, usually trim, maintain as needed any of the trees. If a resident has any questions about the tree in front of their property in between cycles, they call us up. We are happy to go out there and see what work needs to be done, and we will take care of that. Also, all of that work that we have an inventory of all the trees within our maintenance district. There's really only 2 reasons why a tree can be removed and replaced without further consideration. One of those reasons is for health concerns. If there's a fear or a thought that either partial or a full tree failure is imminent, in the opinion of a certified arborist, that is one reason for removal of the tree. The other is interference of the sanitary sewer system caused by the roots of the tree. One example of a tree that actually met both of those conditions was a pine tree up at Catalpa Park next to the basketball courts. And staff determined that the tree needed to be removed due to its declining health. It had a severe lean, it was impacting the surrounding pavement, and it had a history of blocking the sewer lines in the area, causing backups. A Crimson King maple tree was planted in front of the building. It was approximately 40 feet away from where the pine tree was removed. It was put in that location so it would not sit on top of the sewer line and cause further problems in the future. Because of the conditions at the time, the weather conditions, the tree was not planted for approximately 3 to 5 days, but it was installed properly and is doing well at this point. The removal of the pine tree and the planting of the maple did follow all of the city policies. There was an inspection by a certified arborist ahead of time. We did all of the USA markings to make sure of where all of the underground utilities were before doing the planting, etc. The department removes approximately 80 trees each year, and that is beyond the capacity of the department to do widespread notification before every removal going on. In October of 2009, we established a public notification policy related to trees so that we notify the public for either safety concerns or just for information's sake. And there's 2 criteria that we use to determine if we move into this process. One of those is if it's a single tree, but it has some specific significance to the city. If it's a very historic tree, maybe it's the oldest tree in the city or one of the oldest trees in the city, possibly it's been a tree that was used in city celebrations such as a tree lighting ceremony, that we will do the widespread notification on. The other time that we will do that is if there is a grouping of trees, especially those that would have some impact on the environment. Maybe this grouping of trees forms a windbreak or helps with noise reduction issues or shade issues. One example of that would be the trees along Linden, back behind the Walgreens property. When those were removed and replaced, we did a widespread notification process there, and we think that worked very successfully. I also just want to point out that, as I said, we do remove about 80 trees each year. At the same time, we've always planted more trees than we've removed. So in the last 4 years, where we have removed 327 trees, we've also been able to plant 453 trees. So in that time, there's been a net gain of 126 more trees to our community. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Good, thank you. Any questions of Randy? Irene?
Yes, Randy, do we put any kind of notification on our website about the trees instead of the 2 criteria you did? Would it be feasible or relatively easy to put just a listing on our website, so if anyone has specific questions for a specific area, that they could just click on there and see what trees are being removed? Is that just too burdensome?
We do have all of the tree policies, the ordinances on there, but sometimes if there's a tree that has health concerns, we don't want to give it time to cause partial failure. If there's a limb drop, it could cause damage to a car or a pedestrian or something like that. So usually if we notice that the tree needs to be removed, if it's shaking the ground, it's removed immediately. We wouldn't have time to post it and wait for people to identify and contact us.
Okay. Okay.
That would be my only concern.
No, I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the fine work and your great report. Our second item is receive City Council Donation Subcommittee Report and adopt a resolution authorizing the subcommittee to determine distribution of remaining donations for the Glenview Fire Area.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I have some short comments just to summarize the recent recommendations of the subcommittee, and perhaps the subcommittee members will have some additional comments for you. The report in front of you outlines a recent meeting of the subcommittee along with 3 resident members who have recently been appointed and added to the committee in order to provide a strong representation and perspective of the neighborhood of individuals who have been impacted and damaged by the results of the explosion and fire on September 9th. As the council is aware, based on your previous action, and that action being based on previous recommendation of the subcommittee, we have proceeded to distribute a very large portion of the approximately $399,000 which was donated to the city for the benefit of the victims of the explosion and fire. In total, we have allocated a total of $352,000. Checks have been cut in that amount, and many and virtually most of the checks have been picked up and distributed to the individuals eligible under the council's previous policy. There is a summary in your packet that represents the current status of the distribution effort as of last week, beginning of last week. Since that time, I'm told that another approximately 12 families have picked up their checks. So we are down to about 20 checks remaining to be picked up of the original approximately 100 individuals eligible to receive checks. So I would say over the past 2 weeks, there's been a very good progress in getting those funds out to the individuals who are eligible under the council's policy. As the council is aware, the subcommittee's recommendation included a relatively modest remainder amount to be held back for further consideration, and it's that discussion that's in front of you tonight, what to do about those funds. Based on discussion at a meeting last week among the subcommittee, now consisting of 5 members, the committee recommends that a very simple process be established whereby a form be mailed to all of the addresses in the Glenview neighborhood, and residents be solicited to submit a very simple, short statement of their need in order to request funds from the remainder amount of what is now approximately $47,000. Distribution of those funds would be made in amounts up to a maximum of $2,000 each, according to the committee's recommendation. And I believe it continues to be the committee's intent that those funds be distributed as quickly as possible. And to that end, the committee proposes that the form be distributed soon, that then we begin immediately to accept requests by way of the completed form, and that the committee meet as needed in order to review those submittals and to determine the distribution of funds based on their assessment, consideration of those requests. That, in a nutshell, is the action, the authorization to proceed in that manner is the subcommittee's request of you tonight. There is a resolution presented that would document that action. I would only add that the committee had one additional conversation, and staff was directed to do some research, which we have done, and we will report back in a little bit more detail to the subcommittee about a proposal that originated in the January 5th community meeting that was hosted by the subcommittee members, whereby residents were invited to come and make their suggestions directly to the subcommittee at an early stage in the distribution decision-making. At that time, a resident raised a suggestion that funds could potentially be spent to hire a person who would act as an advocate or a one-on-one assistance provider to work with residents who might be experiencing difficulties primarily with their insurance companies in resolving insurance reimbursement issues. Potentially an advocate could work on other issues, but that seemed to be the primary topic of concern. Staff was asked to do some research on that topic. We will report back to the subcommittee, and it's our assessment that there is probably a way to provide some additional services in that arena through our contacts both at the Insurance Commissioner's Office as well as within the nonprofit service community. At this point, I don't anticipate that the committee will be recommending to you a huge allocation out of these funds for that purpose, but that is another topic that's currently on the table and under consideration by the committee. So at this time, the committee is requesting your authorization to proceed as outlined and for your authority for them to make decisions and distribute funds to residents based on the individual resident requests.
Good. Any additional comments by the committee?
Council Member O'Connell and I remain sensitive to the fact that we do want to make a very expeditious decision on what we do with these funds, and at the same time we want to make sure that we are making the best possible use of those funds. And so, as the city manager mentioned, the discussion that we had with the resident members of the subcommittee focused on two issues. One, the distribution of cash assistance immediately, and we discussed the idea of distributing a form. So that is one thing that we want to get the council's approval to do, is to solicit that that information from the residents, and also the approval to move forward with acting on those forms as they come in and making decisions as a committee as to the validity of those requests, and making a judgment on how those funds should be distributed. The second topic, of course, was the possible use of the funds for providing an advocate. And most of the feedback that we got during that discussion was around people having issues dealing with their insurance, dealing with contractors, and really the need for somebody that understands some of these issues to be involved in helping them get through these sometimes very difficult negotiations that they have to go through in the process of rebuilding. The amount of funds, of course, that we have in reserve right now are rather limited, and again, so we decided to explore that as a separate track, but not delay this other process. So what we're also looking for is direction from the full council on whether that is something that we should be exploring, or whether we should maintain our focus on distributing the funds. So that's what we'd like to discuss tonight.
Any comments, Rico?
Through the chair. Just quickly, I have a few, but the first one is are the names of the folks that are serving on the subcommittee with you going to be communicated, or is that not being done? Or
May I? I wanted to make 2 points, and that
Okay,
was one
sorry.
of them. The subcommittee members asked to remain anonymous.
Okay.
They live in the neighborhood. They have been affected by the fire, and they don't want to be perceived, or, I guess perceived as having favoritism or not, or they don't want to be asked questions as they're out walking around. So they asked to remain anonymous, and we told them we would do that. Also, any requests that come in, those will be kept confidential, so we're not going to broadcast who's asked for money or how much or any of those things. They'll come into a room, we'll sit down, we'll make the decisions, and those pieces of paper will be put in a safe place. So that's basically that part.
Okay. Okay. So the $2,000, I guess, was a number that was derived just because of obviously looking at what's in the account versus, and that's where the 2,000, there was no real
It was-
scientific, it was just a matter of
No, we wanted to reach as many people as possible with as much money as we could. So we discussed how much that would be. People could request as little as they want to, but no more than $2,000.
Is the subcommittee concerned that, according to the resolutions, I guess this application would go out to everybody in Crestmore too? Is that my understanding, with the exception of those 100 or so that have already received?
No, they can have it as well.
So they could, if they already received the initial, they could come back and request more for whatever. So we're talking about over 300 homes that will receive this.
Yes.
So the subcommittee is prepared to receive a variety of this and spend the time that is required, because it may not be a lot, and it could be. It's going to be very hard to dissect and come through and try to allow one's heart and mind to make these decisions on such a terrible situation. So the subcommittee also is asking for it no longer to come to the city council for review or approval as far as the remainder $47,000 funds.
We,
Well, We would like the council to approve our action on anything that is requested through the form, so that the subcommittee would have authorization to respond to anything that comes via those forms, but not anything beyond that. So if we were to say, have another recommendation to spend some of the funds for the advocate, if we choose to do that, then I think we would want to come back and request the city council to approve that action. But what we're looking for here is, again, so that we can keep the momentum going and not drag this out longer, that once we do get applications back, that we are allowed to take action on those.
Okay, and that makes me a little more comfortable about the advocate, as far as it coming back on that,
Oh,
on
absolutely.
that notion. Specifically, now we're talking about the 47,000 potentially being utilized in $2,000 increments, or up to, we should say, by those in the affected area of the Crestmore 2. I have some mixed feelings as far as relinquishing that, because in essence, we have 2 members of the council, and we have 3 members of a subcommittee that, for their direction and their request to serve, was not to have identified. So I'm trying to understand how we can have some transparency so that there is some type of information or data that comes forward to the council, which is also available for public viewing, so that they have a clear view of what's going on. Because I think people did donate to this. They have an expectation and a right to see how these monies are being distributed.
We can work on that. We hadn't thought that part. I guess what we could do is keep the reason for the request anonymous, but who actually receives the request, who actually receives money, could be made public. I don't know how that works.
Well, it's under
Part-
the warrant register, so it's available in one form or another.
Right. Part of our discussion was that it is going to be a difficult thing to decide who gets what and how and all those things. So we discussed a process that would keep it pretty easy to do, and it would take an average of everybody's score. We're going to score them and take an average of everyone's score. So no one person is going to determine anything. It's going to be the average of all 5 scores. It's a process I use in the Beautification Task Force Awards, and it works really well, and it just works really well. So that was that part. So the reason for the funds, we would like to keep anonymous or confidential.
And then I did notice that you had a submittal date of May 1st, so you'll wait up until...
No, that's another, do you want to? That's another thing we discussed, and what we would like to do is, as they come in, say we get a batch of 5 or 6 or 10 right away, we'll work on those right away. We actually have a meeting date set for March 1st, 2nd?
First week of March.
The first Tuesday in March. We already have that meeting date set for the subcommittee, so we're ready to go as soon as you guys, as soon as we all
Yeah,
vote.
and I guess, and I think it is important to put a date, and I just didn't know if you put it too far out and somebody mid to late April says, well, and then they're saying, well, I'm sorry, I wish you'd come sooner because the 47,000 is gone. I don't know, is May 1st too far out to ask for maybe for a return reply on that?
That was a discussion we had, that you can put your 2 cents worth in it. My feeling was we hold everything till May, the first week of May, and then do everything all at once. The rest of the subcommittee felt that it should go as they came in because of the urgency of some people's needs. So I acquiesced because of that. It's a compromise.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback and answering all my many questions. But again, just seeing this, today for the first time, and trying to get a better feel for this. Again, I think the transparency is important. I think having some viewing for the public and for those who've contributed to the funds. But I also don't want to continue to delay by us having to meet every 2 weeks. One of the concerns I think residents, so couldn't be at the January 5th meeting to the Brown Act, was that they want to be able to have the monies if needed, and they want to be able to have it in a timely and effective fashion. So I can see the Vice Mayor's point of waiting until May 1st, and in essence, we've delayed that again, and that kind of defeated the purpose that we've heard. So I think you've answered enough of my questions that I would feel comfortable.
Okay.
First of all, regarding the authorization to give you your subcommittee, I have no problem with that at all. I think you've done a great job already with a lot larger quantities of money, and you apparently are very, very, very sensitive. It's obvious to people's needs. So the process that you've developed is very well thought out and very sensitive, and I'm sure you'll continue in that mode. So as far as the authorization, I have no problem with that. I do have a little hesitancy on the advocate portion of it, because as we've said since September, this is uncharted territory for us, and every time we turn around, there's something new happening. And I would just speculate that the person, whoever that person was that said we need an advocate for insurance, maybe a lot of those issues have already been answered simply because the passage of time has taken care of it. We've heard of issues with insurance and insurance companies and adjusters up there having some issues with a lot of the individuals, and I think, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, there are a lot of other facilities out there that can in fact be ombudsmen and put some pressure on and work between the homeowners and the insurance companies, so we don't have to take hard-earned money that was given to the individuals to put into an advocacy type of expense. So that's my 2 cents on the advocate. But once again, I think you've done a great job.
Thank you. I'd like to make a
Yes.
comment on that. One of the things that staff responded to everyone's questions on the subcommittee is just what you discussed, and they're researching the things that the Red Cross can do, their caseworkers, the insurance
United
dep-
Policyholders.
that
United
one, but the other one,
Policyholders.
and the
State Insurance Commissioner's
Thank you.
Office.
The State Insurance Commissioner's Office and the Long-Term Recovery Group all are working toward doing and finding ways and means to help people all with this. So those were avenues and venues that we're going to research before we spend any money on any other thing like the advocacy.
Great.
Okay?
More discussion or action on this item?
The action, I'd like to introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item C, under conduct of business, adopt a resolution proclaiming the termination of local emergency related to the Glenview fire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. You have heard about this item several times in the past since September 9th, at which time I proclaimed and the City Council subsequently ratified a state of emergency in the city of San Bruno. The actions that you have previously taken have extended that condition of emergency as originally declared as required under state law. In other words, you are required to continuously reevaluate the need for the continuation of the emergency declaration and to, by extension, terminate that emergency condition at the earliest practicable time. Under the city's code, the declaration of emergency and the specific documents that we executed allow for the city to suspend the normal requirements under state law for competitive bidding in the condition of an emergency situation in order that the city is able to respond immediately and effectively to deal with conditions of extreme peril to public safety and the condition of private and public property. While our situation and the situation of residents in our community is far from normal. In other words, we have not yet, and we will not for some time to come, be able to affirmatively state that San Bruno is back to normal. While that is the case, it is also the case that it is no longer in staff's recommendation necessary to continue the state of emergency and by those authorities to allow the city to suspend competitive bidding. When we last talked about this approximately a month ago, I told you that we were continuing the emergency, or that we recommended continuation of the emergency for as long as we could reasonably assure ourselves that the rainy season was not going to damage or provide an additional hazard to the conditions of the fire area, which obviously has been denuded of its normal vegetative cover and therefore at some risk of erosion or other types of hazard. As the council is aware, we have initiated and are progressing well with actions to rebuild damaged retaining walls in the canyon. We have completed erosion control measures necessary to safeguard the condition of the public property in the canyon area. We've taken a variety of other actions to secure the physical and operational safety of the neighborhood that was so devastatingly impacted by the explosion and the fire. Again, while we are far from back to normal, we're recommending to you tonight, and that while we would state affirmatively that the effects of the emergency situation are still and will continue to be felt for some time, we recommend to you tonight that it is no longer specifically necessary to continue the state of emergency, and we're recommending at this time your action to officially terminate the emergency situation. Just for your information with regard to the retaining walls in the canyon, the wall on the Claremont side of the canyon, which was considered to be the most urgent repair needed, is virtually 95% complete. In other words, very close to full completion, and work is in progress on the retaining wall on the Glenview side of the canyon. And again, in anticipation of reasonably good weather and with the progress already made to date, we believe that that work will continue to be completed expeditiously. As the council is aware, there remain many repairs that are necessary to both private as well as public property. Focusing on the public property, street, sidewalk, water and sewer repairs remain necessary, and those repairs, those permanent repairs, will be completed over the coming months during the construction season, and once we're able to complete the plans and all of the necessary preparations for that work. And again, we're not anticipating that there would be any reason why that would need to be done with a suspension of competitive bidding. So we would anticipate completing those repairs in the normal procedural manner. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions of the city manager?
Just real quick, I appreciate the slope update to the city manager. Can you just, maybe just also for the public, maybe give some ETA as far as the Glenview Street? It's been a big question about when it may be repaired and being able to be used once again.
Yes, the staff is currently in the process of identifying the design and the necessary scope of the repairs, both for the street, the sidewalk, as well as the park. We anticipate at this time being in front of the council later this spring with anticipated construction sometime this summer during the normal construction season to do the full repairs on Glenview. I'm also aware that, and that's for the completely rehabilitating the infrastructure in that area. There has been concern expressed or interest expressed among the community of whether that area could be made somewhat passable in a more timely manner, either to pedestrians or vehicles. We're looking at that as well, and obviously our primary consideration is the safety of the public in and around both that damaged infrastructure as well as proximate to what is a very steep drop-off and unprotected slope at the current time into the canyon. There remains some consideration of the need to protect and maintain the explosion, the blast site, hole open But those are all activities, closing the hole and potentially allowing some form of accessibility through that area. I would anticipate we might be able to do some of those things sooner than the full repairs will be completed.
Thank you.
Any questions? Action on this item?
If not, I'll go ahead and introduce the resolution to terminate the local emergency.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar,
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item D, receive, report, and adopt a resolution to protect redevelopment agency funds in light of state budget issues and impacts. We have 4 items, 2 for the city and 2 for redevelopment, and because of some procedural issues that just came up before the meeting, we will receive the reports and discussion, but we won't have any action this evening on those items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council and the agency board. At your last meeting, the City Council demonstrated their strong concern, and the agency board, sitting in joint session, demonstrated your strong concern and your urgent interest that we move forward immediately to evaluate and then recommend to you any actions that would be necessary and prudent to protect redevelopment resources and redevelopment activities in the face of the governor's proposal to eliminate redevelopment altogether as a state budget balancing strategy. The story in terms of what's going on at the state level has not changed much since our last report to you. In other words, it continues to be an urgently important issue for our community as well as communities up and down the state of California. Aggressive actions are underway, being spearheaded both by the California Redevelopment Association as well as the League of California Cities, and you can expect to continue to hear urgent calls for action, including letter writing, which we have done based on your direction at your last meeting, advocacy by talking about the issues and the impacts to state legislators, and potentially other advocacy actions as the days and weeks progress. The specific direction that the council and the agency board provided was for us to evaluate a number of action items and to return to you with a report and any actions that we considered urgent and necessary. So, as the mayor indicated, there is some additional analysis that we would like to do, and we are confident in our ability to give you a thorough report tonight and to provide you with an updated action item at your next meeting that we believe will potentially provide even greater protection and give us an opportunity to more carefully evaluate the potential for agency member conflict of interest relative to this particular action. What you have in front of you tonight is a summary of those items that we discussed briefly with you last time, and I'm going to go through them and tell you what the results of our analysis is. As we, along with many others throughout the state, are looking at a variety of means by which we might adequately protect our redevelopment resources. First, we recognize that the governor's proposal does not intend to affect existing agency obligations that have been documented, that are in place, and that are fully enforceable. So, as outlined in the report, we were pleased to see that our agency does have a small number of existing agreements, which our review demonstrates are, in fact, adequately strong to assure that we can be reasonably confident that additional protection is not necessary. Those actions include existing cooperation and reimbursement agreements and owner participation agreements that the agency has previously entered. Those are outlined in the report. There are a total of 4 of them. They relate to the crossing project and our affordable housing subsidies to the properties owned and managed by Archstone. And they include the pledge of redevelopment resources to the bond indebtedness for the resources that built the Police Plaza facility, as well as a cooperative agreement between the city and the redevelopment agency related to the advance of funds and the outstanding note payable essentially from the redevelopment agency to the city, whereby the city advanced funds to the agency a number of years ago during its startup phase before tax increments sufficient to operate the agency were being generated. So good news, those agreements are in place. They've been reviewed, and our recommendation to you is that they remain adequately strong to reasonably protect the agency resources. We considered the potential of looking at transfer of real property owned by the agency. As the council knows, we have one such piece of property. At this time, there is a great deal of uncertainty in the governor's proposal about what the state would actually do with real assets. And there's enough uncertainty that we don't reasonably expect that the state would actually seize real assets owned by redevelopment agencies. So at this point, we're not recommending to you that any action is necessary to secure the former Wells Fargo site that is currently owned by our San Bruno redevelopment agency. If it became clear that that was a necessary, important item, that could be done relatively quickly. At this point, we're not recommending it. Similarly, we're not recommending that we take action to establish a housing authority. That was another item that is being considered up and down the state in order to protect housing funds. We recommend that a cooperative agreement is a more flexible and implementable idea in order to protect redevelopment housing set-aside funds. You have some of those agreements already in place, and we'll recommend additional cooperation agreements to protect affordable housing funds. And that is the primary recommendation that we are making to you tonight, and that is that the city and the agency essentially enter into cooperative agreements on 2 different topics. The first is the authorization for an agreement that would provide redevelopment housing set-aside funds to be dedicated to certain affordable housing projects that would be completed by the city. There is a chart in the staff report that outlines approximately 5 specific locations where new affordable housing projects might be envisioned over the next several years. A couple of them are already in some phase of discussion, and we anticipate that at least some of these projects are very likely to come to fruition and could only be completed if they received some form of affordable housing assistance, as this redevelopment agency has previously provided very, very successfully to the construction of affordable housing at the crossing. So we will be recommending to you that you consider entering into a cooperation agreement that would situate the availability of housing set-aside funds for those projects. On a more broad basis, we are recommending your consideration of a similar cooperative agreement for public improvements. Public improvements that, should redevelopment continue in force and effect as it currently exists, would be considered by the agency and would likely be funded and completed using redevelopment funds. In order to develop the list of specific projects and the amounts that we anticipate would be necessary over a period of time to fund those projects as they're listed in this report, staff reviewed several source documents, including the 5-year implementation plan, which was approved by our redevelopment agency approximately or just exactly 1 year ago. That 5-year process outlines a tangible work program and specific projects that are proposed for consideration during the 5-year implementation period. So these are good, solid concepts and projects that the agency already has front and center on the radar screen. We looked at the projects and improvements that are moving their way to completion through the strategic plan that is being developed through our downtown and transit corridor specific planning process. As the agency and council are aware, there is a tangible vision that plan expresses for the downtown and the new Caltrain station area of our community in the heart of our redevelopment project area. Without redevelopment funds, that vision it will become a dusty booklet on the bookshelf. If we are able to adequately articulate those projects, as we've attempted to do in the document you have before you tonight, we anticipate that we have a good shot at being able to protect redevelopment resources and deploying them in the manner that you anticipate based on that strategic planning process. We looked also at the general plan and at the redevelopment plan itself as it was situated when the city first formed its redevelopment agency in 1999. So all of the projects that are listed here have both a current and a tangible redevelopment purpose. They are anticipated and eligible for funding through the redevelopment tax increment resource, and we believe they're necessary and vital to the future of this community. The action that we will be bringing back to you at your next meeting in 2 weeks from now will be to enter into formal cooperation agreements whereby the agency pledges its tax increment resources in the amounts that are outlined in the documents you have in front of you, pledges those resources over time to the city, and via the city post redevelopment being terminated, then the city, with the redevelopment resources having been pledged and secured, would then become the agency that would complete those projects that are currently envisioned to be completed as well as funded through redevelopment. The staff proposes that we also look at some additional projects that are anticipated in our general plan, outlined in the redevelopment agency formation plan, but not yet articulated in this document, related to replacement, rehabilitation, and improvement of public facilities. Again, with the exception of city halls, which are not eligible as redevelopment projects, many of our public facilities may be eligible as redevelopment projects and are not yet included on the list you have in front of you for a variety of procedural reasons that we would like to assess a little bit further. There is an additional procedural requirement in order to contractually obligate redevelopment funds for those types of purposes through a cooperative agreement. We'd like to have a little bit more time to evaluate and discuss with you those additional types of projects and to bring this back at your next regular meeting on February 22nd. I have Mark Sullivan, our redevelopment project manager here, who's done a great deal of work on this and is probably better able to answer your questions than I am, but between us, we're happy to take any questions.
Good. Any questions of staff?
I do.
Irene?
Thank you. First of all, the projects you've listed here are very vital, and I think it's great that you've got them all down, and it's in fact a nice, easy way to see where our money would go. I'm hoping that the public facilities that you're discussing, top on your list would be a library. And one of the words that Connie said was vital, and I believe that a library is vital to the benefit of everybody in our city, and I hope that that's one of the things that you're going to be looking at. So, thank you.
Whoops. Yes, the library is at the top of the list of the public facilities that we're looking at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? We'll look
No.
forward to the 22nd.
Great.
Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the council and the agency board for your leadership in recognizing what a critical threat this is to the future of San Bruno and to the state of California.
All right, thank you. Item E, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a communications site lease agreement with T-Mobile West Corporation to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications facility at Grundy Park.
Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, good evening. I am Tenzin Gelson, your cable television director. Last April, T-Mobile approached the city to inquire about leasing a 20-square-foot plot at Grundy Park to locate a cellular facility. Prior to that, T-Mobile had considered a few other locations, including a city pump station, a local church, and a joint utility pole on Park Avenue. However, these alternative locations were deemed unsuitable either by T-Mobile, as these sites did not meet their technical standards, or by the Planning Commission, as the proposed project would have created a negative aesthetic impact on the surrounding neighborhood, ultimately leading T-Mobile to Grundy Park. After several discussions and collaboration with various city departments, including community services, public services, and planning, a suitable site in Grundy Park was chosen to locate the cellular facility. Today we're at a point where T-Mobile, having undergone architectural review and the Planning Commission approval process, has secured a use permit for its project, and staff recommends City Council approval of a communications site lease agreement with T-Mobile. Regarding the cellular facility itself, T-Mobile will place cellular antennas on an extended joint utility pole located in the rear easement of a property that abuts the park, and its communication equipment cabinet on a concrete slab adjacent to the public restroom in the park. T-Mobile will utilize radomes, a protective shield used by the industry to conceal the cellular antennas, and a 6-foot-tall wooden fence and with a 2-foot-tall lattice crown to conceal the telecom cabinet. Also at the 6-foot mark, a horizontally installed chain link fence will fully enclose the electronic cabinet from unauthorized access. The radome and fencing material will be painted to blend in with the surrounding structures. According to the Planning Commission report, T-Mobile's project is as proposed, is compliant with the city's zoning code pertaining to noise, stealth, and radio frequency emission. The city's use permit conditions of approval has established the minimum standards for the cellular facility, and T-Mobile must comply to maintain its use permit. One use permit condition requires T-Mobile to use graffiti-resistant material for the fence enclosure, and requires the company to remove graffiti within 24 hours of appearance. If the graffiti is not removed within the specified time frame, the city may remove the graffiti at T-Mobile's expense. It is also my understanding that as part of the Planning Commission approval process, the neighborhood was noticed of the cellular installation, and as of this time, there have not been any objections from the community. Regarding the lease agreement, the city's communication site lease agreement requires lessees to maintain and comply with the city's use permit. The lease contains provisions that permit the city to terminate the lease in the event of a default or a failure to cure a default within a specified time. The initial term of the lease is for 10 years, and the lease is renewable for 4 additional 5-year terms for a total lease term of 30 years. Although the lease is set to automatically renew on its anniversary, it can be terminated with a 30-day advance written notice not to renew prior to the expiration of the then current term. The lease will commence upon issuance of a building permit by the city. The first rental payment is due within 20 days of this issuance. The proposed monthly rent is $1,545 during the first year of the initial 10-year term, and will increase annually thereafter by increase in the Consumer Price Index, all items, all urban consumers, or CPIU, but the increase will not be less than 3% or more than 5% of the then current rent. The city currently has 6 leases in place with rental payments ranging between $1,750 and $3,300 per month. These leases with higher rents involve leasing of much larger spaces and the installation of monopole or monopine or an attachment to a city-owned communications tower. This lease is the first of its kind where the antennas are going to be located on a joint utility pole that is not owned by the city, and the city is just leasing a small space for the telecom cabinet. As such, staff is of the opinion that the proposed rent is appropriate. T-Mobile will also remit a one-time administrative fee of $5,000 within 15 days of inspection and sign-off on the building permit. The lease is expected to generate approximately $23,500 in the first year of the initial term, and in excess of $190,000 over the initial 10-year period. That's complete. I'll take any questions you may have.
Good. Any questions of staff?
Through the chair.
Michael?
Do you know offhand, and I don't know if this is a fair question, but do you know offhand how many other cellular towers are within that area?
Within the T-Mobile, the Grundy Park area, as far as I know, that would be the only structure in that vicinity.
That would be the only one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other ones that we have, the 6 other ones that we have, are located a great distance from that location.
Okay.
Yeah. They probably are private ones, but I'm not aware of where they might be located.
Okay. And I realize that every carrier would probably have similar reception issues in the area, so we don't have any applications currently from other carriers to be somewhere in the same area?
We don't have any at this time. I'm looking at another T-Mobile installation, but it's away by Courtyard and nowhere close to Grundy Park.
Okay. Okay. I was a little, just sort of a side comment, I was a little surprised to see that we have absolutely no say in safety issues. We can rule on aesthetics and other nuisance type things, but whether or not we believe is a safety issue is solely the jurisdiction of the federal government, and we have no say whatsoever on that. I thought that was interesting.
It appears that there's a standard set for the radio frequency emissions, and according to the study that was done, currently the T-Mobile facility will generate, I believe, 0.06% of the limit at the ground level and 0.12% at the second floor level. So it appears that they're way below, within the specified limits of the radio frequency emissions in terms of related to health or health, I guess in this case, the health of the public.
Well, since you brought that up, this isn't directly relevant, but since it doubles going from first floor to second floor, what happens on the third floor? Does it double again?
You know, this is according to the Planning Commission report. I really don't investigate that at that level. There's a gentleman here from Andrew Levy who's with T-Mobile. I'm sure he might be able to answer that question if you like to.
If you have
Come
an
to
answer.
the podium, please. Right.
Hi, thank you for having me. Andrew Levy, I work with a representative for T-Mobile. And with reference, you've asked a radio frequency question, and I do have to apologize. I work with on the site acquisition side, and I'm here representing the lease, so I don't have expertise on the radio frequency. I believe that that was brought up during the Planning Commission hearing, so we would have to refer back to what was brought up in the Planning Commission. But if there are any questions about the lease and the the conditions of the contract, that's what I'm here to address.
Okay. Actually, I have another question that you may be able to answer.
Sure.
When you decide that a new tower needs to go up, is that based on your own research of your coverage, or is it driven by consumer demand for that stronger signal?
The engineers at T-Mobile have collect all their data, and they have identified where there are holes or in the coverage, and so it's based on T-Mobile's internal engineering process, which again, I'm personally not an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
However, they do collect all that data. It does also, they do also compare that with customer data as to where the customers who purchase their phones for their service, where they live, where they expect that the coverage is going to be needed.
Okay, thank you.
Good. I believe the city attorney had a comment.
Only to say that in response to the federal preemption issue, I think it's fair to say it's a constant source of irritation among local agencies that the federal government does preempt regulation of those emissions as long as there's a study that shows that the emissions are below the federal threshold. So as long as that's the case, the cities are unfortunately prohibited from further regulating on that aspect.
Okay, Rico?
Through the chair. Two questions and a comment. First comment is, I like the graffiti abatement provision, and I think that should be something that we should strive for anything that comes in that fashion. The two questions are, just for everybody's sake, is the monthly rent. How is that number derived? How do we know that's the going rate, that's the market?
I did a survey 3 years ago and looked at what all the different cities, the 18 agencies in the San Mateo County are doing in terms of what rates they're charging. And based on that, we established we actually set our rates at the higher level. Actually, we set it at a mark that exceeded what the highest rent was being charged in the county at that point in time. This, I believe, was 3 to 4 years ago, and currently we pegged that at $3,000 a month, and right now we're at about $3,200, and usually it's for the facilities that are larger. Like, for example, let me give you an example. The most recent one prior to this one was a T-Mobile installation again at the cable television head end. They're leasing a 200 square foot location, a 10 by 20 plot, and they're installing a monopine that's using stealth on a pole. So for that type size installation, we're charging $3,000 a month. Now in this case, they're really leasing only a 4 by 5 20 square foot plot, which is a tenth of what the T-Mobile was leasing at the head end. And the other thing is that we want to do two things. One, look at it from not only the size of the property, but also the fact that T-Mobile, these telecom cellular providers are looking for an area where they can improve the quality of service. So they're looking not only just from a size of the plot, but also the strategic location of that. So based on those factors, we felt that we should charge our rent based on that criteria. I think that's how we have. So if they have better coverage in a certain area, then they're obviously going to generate better revenue. There's going to be better coverage for their service. People are going to subscribe to their service versus another carrier that has poor coverage. So those things are taken into consideration in terms of how we establish the rental payments.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is this is on a survey 3 years ago, maybe 4, and based at that time, we were at the top end, and based on that is how we derive this number, based on the lot size.
Back then, we were at the low end of the rental scheme. I mean, so we turned around and established we established a rent that was at the high end 4 years ago. So right now, on a site that is a larger site like the one we have at the head end, where they've taken a 200 square foot plot of land to build their facility, we're charging $3,200 a month in that.
So you're assuring me then today, this is where it should be, okay? I know about 3 or 4
Right.
years ago, prices change
Right.
over that period of time.
Exactly.
So I'm worried about today.
Yeah, so basically what we do is we set the price at the market rate, and then annually it goes up CPI, just like we have, in this case, this rent is set at $1,500 and it'll increase by CPI annually. So many of the leases that we have today, the 6 other leases were started some of them are 15 years ago. We had one lease with Sprint that was at the fire station that was started 15 years ago and that expired last year. And that is an installation where they're leasing a larger space. They're using our attachment to a city tower, communications tower as well. So we reestablished that rent at I believe it's $3,100 a month right now. So depending on the size of the land and the strategic nature of the business, we establish the rents based on that.
Okay. The last thing is in regards to the lease, it's the first 10-year, then it's renewable for 4 additional 5-year terms, and which will be grand total of 30 years. And it says the lease will automatically renew on its anniversary date unless 30 days written termination notice. I always have a concern when something's automatic. We have for 10 years from now, I like to see things come back, even though maybe it doesn't need to be an action item. But somehow I think those that sit up here, from 10 years from now, should be able to see this item come back up so it can be reviewed, or see if there's any concerns throughout that time period. Things change in 10 years.
Right.
So I think it is due justice for it to come back to this body in order for it to be reviewed and see where we stand.
Absolutely,
at that
and
point.
that's the reason why we have the 30-day not to renew notice period. So when it comes up to renewal, if the council so desires, we can bring this item back up at that point, and then seek council guidance whether we should renew the agreement or not.
It could be a consent. I just
Absolutely.
think at some point, I think this body should review those things.
I think we'll make a point to put it on
That's
the
just my opinion. I
calendars
don't know what the
when
rest
these
of the
things come up for
council feels.
renewal to make sure that it's brought up to the city council for approval.
Any other questions of staff? Action?
I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. And our last item under conduct of business is adopt a resolution approving the traffic calming toolkit guidelines for public distribution.
Honorable Mayor, Council members, good evening. Clara Fabry, Public Services Director. In 2007, in order to address growing neighborhood traffic concern, the City Council approved a comprehensive traffic calming program to better and more effectively manage this program. A set of guidelines or a toolkit was developed to guide us in the implementation process of this program. To guide us includes all of the residents and all of the decision makers, including ourselves, in this process. The expected outcome from this development of this set of guidelines would be that the cost of implementation of any solution and also the implementation time of any of those solutions would be, the time would be less and the cost would be less. These design guidelines was approved last year by the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee, and 2 members of the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee is here, including the chair, and they will help me with any question what you might have, and I will not be able to help you with. If these guidelines will meet your approval, then this will be used as informational and educational tool for the residents and all of the decision-making process. Just in summary, this toolkit or guidelines includes three main approach: education, enforcement, and engineering. For basic solution is community outreach, high visibility crosswalk, enforcement, striping, speed display units, and restriction turn signs. For speed and safety control devices, this toolkit includes bulb outs, chokers, median, speed bumps, and traffic circles, and medians, and roundabouts. For volume control devices, the toolkit includes diverters, median barriers, and street closures. As you recall, the traffic calming program includes a process how anybody in the city, any resident, can request the consideration of implementation of any traffic calming project. And the process, how it was approved by you, is for them to come to public services and to initiate the process. A decision, a first decision will be, first assessment will be made at that time, what the proper process will be to address that specific problem. If these toolkits will be approved by you tonight, then this will be available for the public on, will be placed on our website, and also will be available on hard copy at the City Hall. I would like to add, before to go to the question, I also would like to add that our financial situation is very well known, and all of these alternatives has a cost associated with them, including for those with the lowest cost, like information and education, but also law enforcement, or some of those engineering solutions are very expensive. How is traffic circles or roundabouts? Those are very expensive solutions. And reason why any of these requests from the public will have to go through a prioritization process and to be included in our budget based on the funding what you will approve for this program in our yearly budget approval process. If you have any question.
Any questions of our director? Irene?
Thank you. First of all, this is a fabulous idea. This was a lot of work, and I really appreciate the fact that you included actual San Bruno streets and traffic calming things that already exist. So that's great. I just have a couple of comments. As far as the format goes, on the published format, is this going to be the format you're going to use? And the reason I'm asking is there's a lot of space, and as we all age, our eyes need a little help. So it looks like there's room to make the font bigger. Okay. So if you could make it bigger, I think it would make it a little easier on everybody.
No problem.
I have a couple things. I think it's important to include the education. It's especially important to educate the kids. They always nag the parents, and it's great. I have a concern about the enforcement part. As you say, we have budget constraints. We have police personnel, not problems, but we've cut back on personnel. And I would add a comment in here that, or some kind of notice that, while we enforce law, why we do enforcement, it's not always available all the time, or some kind of comment that, I'm not sure what, but letting people know that the policeman's not going to be at every corner, at every stop sign, enforcing every traffic law around. That was one comment. And then on the page, I think it's page 12, where you have the speed bumps. I know this is the speed bump on Cypress, but on 3rd Avenue, you did the rubber speed bumps that went halfway and halfway,
Yes.
which, by the way, are really effective. And I'm sure they didn't, well, I'm not sure, but I would imagine they didn't cost as much as the concrete ones or the asphalt ones. So is that a viable alternative to the concrete ones? And if so, maybe that could be included here if the cost is less? Do you know what maybe you weren't here when we did 3rd Avenue.
Yeah, I wasn't here, but I know what that specific project, and I don't know exactly what is the cost difference between those, but I don't think here what kind of material would be used. I think that can be included in these guidelines. I don't think the type of material used would preclude the application of any of these alternatives.
No, I was just thinking if it was less expensive, that might be just another approach.
Yes.
Okay, that was all I had. Thank you.
In response to your concern raised, I think I will just comment that one of the main benefits of these guidelines is that for each of those solutions is included the applicability and also the advantage and disadvantage. And from the beginning, everybody who is looking at those possibilities will have a better understanding and expectation what problem with what kind of solution is more appropriate to address. And I will think about how to include a general disclaimer in the beginning or at the end to make sure that is not raised a public expectation which will not be able to be met, knowing our budget limitation, to make sure that will be clearly stated that depending on the available internal resources and financial resources.
Great, thank you. That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay.
Through the chair, that was one of my comments, and I think both of you summarized it correctly. Raising the expectations is always my concern. You put out something, they say, well, you have it, you've given us options, and now you're saying you can't do it. So what was the point of it? Obviously, we're going to have to deal with our budget, and we'll be working on that very soon to see. But as far as staff and as far as overall dollars enabled to do a lot of these traffic calming measures, may be limited. And the only other, on a side note, and I brought this up already, when we have traffic calming toolkit, I'm just looking at the word toolkit. I don't know, I can't tell you off the top of my head if there's a better word for that, and maybe Mr. Wood or Mr. Hamilton have a reason for why that was used, or maybe you do, but I don't know. I was just trying to think of a more viable word other than toolkit.
Maybe it's just a techie word, what the traffic professionals are using for some kind of already ready set of solutions. And I was using always toolkit that, like with any other trade, you just have certain tools doing your job. And the job is calming the traffic and to change driver behavior. Here, to do it, they are different solution, and each of those solutions are tools available to you. And that's maybe is the techie explanation to it. That's why I tried, this concern was raised before the meeting by others, and that's why I came up with these more guidelines that all of us are more used to it with development guidelines, design guidelines. These are in essence the same kind of solution-oriented, certain standard applications.
Just a comment, you can all think about it.
And we do have a couple of members of the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee. Would you like to say anything further on this?
My name is Eric Wood. I'm the chair of the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee. In regard directly, toolkit that's how it came to us. So we just didn't even address that. We went right into the material. We like it because, like, when I first came on the board, I wanted to put speed bumps on my street, and I didn't know. I was like, okay, I want speed bumps because they're driving so fast. And what we wanted to do is be able to give the citizens the tools or the options that they have to mitigate traffic issues and other things on their street or block or area. And for us, it was important. I like the fact that it does have a cost associated with it, because then it puts the onerous on the people. So when they're coming to us and they're asking us the questions, hey, we want a stop sign here, or we want this, and we're like, well, it doesn't warrant it, or we don't have the budget for it, or we looked at it and we just can't implement it, we can at least give them something and allow them to do their own research and look at it and go see the other areas. But my suggestion on the word toolkit is let it come back to us. You guys accept it, and we can talk about it in the committee. Then it doesn't have to come back to you guys. And if we want to change it, give us that ability to at least change that word, because we can talk about it among the committee. I like the word, but maybe it is too technical.
Sounds good.
Thank you, and we never pass up the opportunity to thank our boards, commissions, and committees. You guys are doing a great job, and this is a big part of it.
Thank you.
So, any action by the council?
I'd love to, is it adopt resolution or pass
Resolution,
it?
introduce
I'd
resolution.
love to introduce the resolution. It's very exciting.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item number 11, report of commissions, boards, and committees. Nothing specific this evening. Item 12, comments from council members. I would like to just announce that about a little over a week ago, the city received a wonderful award from the Peninsula Healthcare District. I accepted the award, but it was really highlighted the efforts of Connie Jackson, our city manager, and her management team for the work they did, the wonderful work they did on the Glenview fire. And it's a very, very nice award. It's going to be hung up at City Hall, and congratulations. Also, that evening, we received, kind of indirectly, the Red Cross is establishing a center in downtown San Bruno and San Mateo Avenue, and the Health Code District has prized us and the Red Cross with $100,000 to help to complete that effort downtown. So that'll really help on a one-on-one basis with the people in the Glenview area that need specific help right here in San Bruno. So those are two really nice things that occurred. Anything else from council members?
Yeah.
One comment,
Michael.
Chairman, if I could. Regarding the action that we approved tonight regarding soliciting requests for additional funds, I just wanted to encourage the members of the affected area to take advantage of this avenue to get some additional relief if it's necessary. And one concern that was raised earlier was that there might be people in the community that are either too proud, too shy, for whatever reason may not want to ask for the funds. If anyone in the area is aware of people that are in need but maybe are not willing to request it themselves, that it would be acceptable for someone to submit an application on their behalf, and we would consider it.
Great. Good
Good
comment.
point.
Thank you. All right, we're going to, item number 13, closed session. We have 4 items under closed session this evening. The first one is a closed session to confer with legal counsel regarding Baykeeper versus City of San Bruno, United States District Court, civil case number 00753 SC, California Government Code Section 54956.9A. Item B, confer with legal counsel regarding State Regional Quality Control Board citation number R2 2010-0004, California Government Code Section 54956.9A. Item C, conferred with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation, 1 case, California Government Code Section 54954.9A. And item D, the city manager and human resources director request a closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6 regarding direction for labor negotiations with the police and public safety mid-management unit bargaining units. And if there's no other comments, questions, discussion, adjournment of this meeting until our next city council meeting on February 22nd right here at the Senior Center. Thank you.